Welcome to the video, guys. The Scott Snap Prats are up in arms again, this time thanks to George Galloway and Micheal Gove. There have been SNP, MSPs and supporters going wild online since yesterday, and it shows no sign of slowing down. Naturally, this is related to the SNP's wish for Indy Ref 2, which they are not likely to be given for the next 20 years or so, but of course the UK government has acted weak in recent months, so anything is possible. We have just seen them capitulate to the student outrage mob, giving them record numbers of A grade, so if you run a business, remember 2020 Libra's results are away with the fairies, like Diane Abbott's mathematical abilities. Well, George Galloway has called for all Scottish citizens living in the UK to be allowed to vote in any Indy Ref that might come in the future, which naturally old fish lip Sturgeon is not happy about, because you might remember less people in Scotland voted for the SNP than voted for Brexit in 2016, meaning if 795,000 Scots living in the UK vote in their referendum, she will get absolutely trounced by the no vote, and the humiliation will be unbearable for her. Remember, the SNP are desperate to get anyone they can to vote for them in order to get what they actually want. They want 16-year-olds who don't know their arsehole from their ear roll, migrants both legal and illegal, and any other Tom, Dick and Harry they can beg or bribe into voting for them. So George Galloway bringing in Scots living in the UK is a 4D chess move, and Gove supporting the idea on Twitter means should any Indy Ref come, you can expect Scots in the UK to get a chance to vote for the United Kingdom, which I expect will end the SNP's dreams because they lack the numbers to contend with the Unionists in Scotland and the rest of the UK. This could mean her dream of vassalage to the EU is doomed to fail, which is obviously good news, but some SNP MSPs have come out crying their little soy boy eyes out, as you would expect, because it's not okay when the other side wants to change the electorate like the SNP do with their mass importation of new Scottish voters from every tin pot nation that they can ferry them in from. Well, the Express has picked up on their outrage with this story, along with the Scott Snap Prats going into absolute shitfits about it, which, as I said, is always good news, and I do love a good old bit of salt mining. And it headlines SNP Fury as Micheal Gove and George Galloway ponder huge Scottish referendum change. The SNP hit out at George Galloway's calls for a major change to any future referendum on Scottish independence. SNP MP Angus Robertson said Mr Galloway's rallying cry for Scots living elsewhere in the UK to be given the chance to have their say in the event of a second vote was desperate, which is pretty much what the SNP are all about. They are a bunch of desperate snivelling shitweasels, as we all know, desperate to become the vassal state of the European Union. Never mind a partner in the United Kingdom, they want to be the bitch of Brussels, which perfectly suits Nicola Fishlip Sturgeon, I suppose. It comes after Minister for the Cabinet Office Micheal Gove appeared to ponder the political commentator's idea, describing his calls to give 795,000 Scots living elsewhere in the UK a vote as an interesting question. And I would have to agree that it is an interesting question and should be happening anyway when you consider people living abroad can actually vote in a general election. So given that is possible, I would say Scots living in the United Kingdom or anywhere else in the world should be able to vote on the independence of their own nation, or whether it stays in the United Kingdom, which I would expect the vast majority of the 795,000 Scots living in the UK would go with the Union over the SNP and their lunacy. Mr Robertson hit back on Twitter writing, with polls now showing a consistent majority in favour of Scottish independence, its opponents in Westminster consider changing the electorate an interesting question. Looks desperate and undemocratic, hashtag IndyRef2, hashtag Scotland, which is rather laughable when you consider the SNP lost a democratic vote and are still going on about it now. Actually, they lost two because Brexit was the same, and they've bitched about that consistently. But then again, we all know the SNP are full of shit, so that shouldn't surprise anyone. Dundee born Mr Galloway said separatism must be answered by all Scots. And here is the tweet here. I'll tell you this, if there's to be a second Indy Ref, then 795,000 Scots living elsewhere in the UK must have a vote. If UK expats can vote in general elections from Spain, then an existential question like separatism must be answered by all Scots. Which is obviously where he tagged Micheal Micheal Gove in it. And obviously, here we have what was just read in that tweet, and it says here that it was shared by Micheal Gove, who simply wrote, as I said, interesting question. Mr. Gove recently visited Scotland, where he sought to heal tensions between Westminster and Holyrood. During a visit to Alness in the Scottish Highlands, Mr. Gove said those who want to feel both Scottish and British should not be forced to choose between the two. But he struck out at people who staged protests at the border on the A1 earlier this month as a few bampots who don't speak for Scotland. Which obviously they ain't, they're just this complete and utter tits rabid lunatics, everybody knows that. That's why there was only about 5 or 10 of them up there at most, if memory serves. And my god, does Micheal Gove look fucking funny with that face nappy on there. What a piss poor fucking thing that is, and a complete waste of time in my opinion. Branded of course with the national religion that is the NHS. He dismissed the demonstration and said, I just think they are a few bampots who don't speak for Scotland. You will always find some people in any situation who will engage in these sorts of stunts. Yes, we see them down in London during the referendum campaign and after it with the screaming Remainers crying their eyes out because they lost a Democratic vote. I mean, they even copied America in trying to blame losing a vote on the Russians because of course Russia does everything, when in fact they just lost because the people of this country do not support them. Simply because they do not support us, end of story. Which, to be honest, the Conservatives don't do anyway, but who are you going to put in? Jeremy fucking Corbyn? Not likely, let's be honest. As I've said before, could you imagine the shit show we'd be in right now if he was actually leading us over the piss poor wanker that is Boris Johnson at the moment, well, what he's shown to be over the past few months anyway. Which, to be honest, is no real surprise to me. He is a politician after all, you all know what I think of them in general. He continued though, they don't speak for Scots, and I know that's the view of the First Minister as well. Yeah, she thinks like the lunatics that were standing there. Let me tell you though, she wouldn't say it in public. The Twitter exchange comes after a recent poll showed support for Scottish independence has reached a record high. Yes, but polls are really not to be believed when they consist of 2,000 people being asked a question in a country that has 5 million citizens. The latest research by Panel Base found the results of the 2014 independence referendum when 55% of Scots voted to stay in the UK were reversed. But of course, like I've said before, there is only one poll that matters, and that is the election, the actual ballot when it comes up, which, as I've said, the next Indie Ref will be in about 20 odd years. Pro-independence organisation Business for Scotland commissioned the poll with Chief Executive Gordon McIntyre Kemp hailing the result as a huge landmark, showing the writing is very definitely on the wall for the Union. No, it's really not, as I've said. You've polled 2,000 people, asked 5 million and then come back to me. And also, when you ask them, make sure to tell them that you won't be able to pay for it, you won't have a currency, a central bank, and you will be in a complete and utter shit show with god-tier levels of austerity, making the Tory austerity that everyone's been bitching about for the past 10 years look like a cakewalk. Like I said, they've asked 1,000 people there, so this poll means absolutely nothing to me, and it should to you. Now, I think you will all agree, this article is rather funny, and the SNP's fury, as it says there, is equally fucking hilarious. Especially when you factor in they called what George Galloway and Micheal Gove are saying here undemocratic and desperate when, as I've said, they import voters as much as the Labour Party, and are determined to get anyone they can to be allowed to vote and bribe them with your money, remember, because we are funding the SNP's elaborate spending up in Scotland. And let's not forget, they also want to give every single working age person 11 grand a year, which naturally they won't be able to pay for, but muggins here in England we certainly will. So hopefully whenever the SNP do get a second Indie Ref, these 795,000 Scots living in the UK will have their say as well and tell Nicola Sturgeon to go and fuck herself.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.